Please be seated. Just another one of those moments or examples where I like to remind us how little we oftentimes understand the Bible. I'm wondering, how many of man, the guy got one talent, and he hit it back. The other guy's got all these other talents, man. That's not fair, right? So here's the question. How many of you know what a talent is? You know what a talent is?
Currency.
It's a currency?
Isn't it like a skill?
Well, talent, that's how we use it in modern language. In the Bible, it's currency. But it's not just currency. Guess how much a talent is worth? A talent is worth 6,000 drachma. There you go, right? Everybody knows what a drachma is worth, right? Okay, now we're going to go into what a drachma is worth now. A drachma is a Greek term simply that meant a day's wages. You would show up to work and you'd be given a coin, a drachma, for one day's work. In theory, if you were pulling down a drachma a day, not only would it keep the doctor away, but it should be enough to live on. A day's wages. A talent is 6,000 of those. So let's calculate that out. That is a couple of years. Okay, maybe more than a couple. That's a ton of money. It's equivalent to like 75 pounds of like gold or silver. To say, he just got one talent as something dismissive is kind of silly. In this case, he was given 6,000 days of work, and he buried it in the ground. Sometimes I like to do this because we read the Bible again over and over and over and over again, and we read these words. We all know the story. How many of you knew we were talking about millions of dollars with one talent? Just helps put in perspective to sit down and understand some of the words that we are presented with, some of the words that we know, some of the words that might make us re-examine a little bit what the story might mean, because I'll tell you, if you look at the front cover of the bulletin, you see a couple. I'm not faulting you, Alex, who does the bulletin. A couple of coins falling into the hands. What if it was 75 pounds of silver falling into the guy's hand? His hand wouldn't be that in good shape anymore. So for those who received more than the measly one talent, it was said of them by the master, "Well done, good and faithful servant." You have to know, as a minister, these are haunting words for me, because "well done, good and faithful servant" is kind of the bookend. They always say that to you when you're either leaving a church or you've gone upstairs. The last words when you stand up at your memorial on the floor of the National Church Convention after you've passed on is, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Now, I want to say, you could just say, "Well done, servant," couldn't you? Good job. The master could have said, "Good job, servants." But it's more than that, actually. Being told, "Well done, good and faithful servants," means more than "well done, servant." Good and faithful are specific qualities. What's the difference between good and faithful? To be good Have you thought about how hard it really is to define good? It's a tough word. It's a word that's, in fact, we spend most of our lives trying to define what good is. Good's a moral statement, a statement about, what's good. A statement about what's right, a statement about having a proper desire to see what God's will come into play, to see proper action. When we think of a good person, we think of a person who does more than follow the rules. We think of a person who has a quality or purity of some kind of greater spirit, a spirit of love, perhaps. To be faithful is about devotion. To be faithful actually isn't about doing what is good. You can be a miserable person and still be faithful. You can be out for yourself and step on all the ants on your way to the market, still get the food you were told to get and bring home. To be faithful means you're doing what you were told to do. When you put these two together of being good and faithful, it is more than a good job. It is saying that you have achieved doing what you were supposed to do and doing it in a way that is pure and good. To say, well done, good and faithful servant, is about more than saying good job. In this case, he says it about somebody who takes his initial 5 talents, right? That's 30,000 days' wages. Pretty impressive, isn't it? That's why when you look at this and you use modern things, what is that? He takes his millions of dollars into the trading world and doubles it. That's a good return, by the way. Any of you who work on Wall Street will know a 100% return is good. If you don't live on Wall Street, you probably know that too. The master is going away on a journey or a trip, and it wasn't just, hey, I'm going to be gone for a while, take a couple of bucks and see what you can do with it. When you talk about the amount of money we're talking about here, he's leaving and probably giving him the majority of his wealth to distribute. Not for the purpose of safekeeping, but to keep his estate and his interests going. These servants, or slaves as they are called in this translation, were entrusted with the business of his whole estate. It's a lot of responsibility. I am guessing, by the way, that they had a house and that they had food. This is in addition to the actual stuff that they needed to live. This story is not a divine statement on good investing. If it is, no one gets it. Well, I mean, the best investors in the world shoot for like 20%, not 100. But you think about this, and you hear language in this passage that says, to those who have much, much will be given. To those who have little, that will be taken away. And you put that in contrast with Jesus saying, the poor, blessed are the poor, for they will inherit the earth, and woe to those who are rich, for they've received their reward. You put those two things together, and on a literal level, they just don't match, do they? In fact, they're opposites. But they're not opposites if you look at something beyond literal property and literal money. If you look at it in terms of intentionality toward faith, toward God, to what it really means to live, they aren't necessarily in opposition. The talents and the coins given to these people is not economic policy. It's about care of the master's estate. Now, oftentimes we read this and we say, oh, talents, that's about the things that I do or the money that I have. That's not the case. These talents were not the slave's talents. These were the things entrusted to them by the master. To do a comparison, what does God entrust us with? Does God entrust us with our paychecks? Maybe so, maybe not, but I don't think that's the point. I'll get back to that in a second. But before I ask what does God entrust us with, what does it mean to do trading? When you hear, oh, they went to the market and traded, it kind of makes it sound like, hey, my shiny coin is this, I'll trade you your shiny coin. That's not what trading means. Anyone, again, who's invested in the stock market or in commodities in particular understands trading is about seeing excess, getting the excess, and bringing that excess to a place of need. These servants use these assets to look for abundance in one place and look for weakness in another. It is not comparable to use it in terms of our modern stock market, in terms of modern wealth. We are talking about an abundance of crops that are being sold on a market and then being transferred to someone who really wants them or needs them. That is what's going on in this situation. In other words, those that took the talents and did something with them were in relationship with other people. They were recognizing the places where they could go, where there was abundance and fear of waste, be able to buy that cheaply and bring it over to people who needed it. The wicked servant, however, he was scared. He had a different concern. He had a concern of retribution. Now, by the way, when it sounds about the master being scared, or him being scared of the master, about being mean for wasting a talent, does it make more sense? When you first read it, you don't know what a talent is. It's kind of like, what? The guy was given a coin and he's going to get in trouble for it? He dug a little hole, and so what's the big deal with that? When you understand it as, what is that? So 300 and as many years' wages. Then you understand it in a different light. The wicked servant had a different concern of retribution. He thought if he blew millions of dollars, his master might be angry. So he buried it into the ground. And what happened then is that he was not in relationship with anyone but himself. What is it that God has entrusted you with? Is it money? Has God said, you know what, here's your paycheck. I want you to do something with it? I would argue no. While it is also true on this level, God has entrusted us as a church with the gift of this building, the work of the Swedenborgians for the 200 years before us that gave us the gift we have to do something wise and good with it. If we sit here and we don't look at where's the abundance, where's the need, how are we in relationship with our community, well, boy, we would be irresponsible. But I don't even think that that's fully what we're talking about. In this situation, I believe what the God-given gift that we are talking about here, these 6,000 days wages that we've been given is about a journey. We have been given life. And that is a life to grow, to change, to walk in the door of the church as a person who's self-directed, who wants to bury that life safely in the ground and to not share it, to being a person whose life is about engaging with other people, taking the risks to share it, to living a life that is not based in fear. Fear is what governed the servant. Fear of doing something wrong, fear of having a negative reaction from the master, a fear that cripples us from living our lives loudly in faith and care. What does it mean to live in a way that your life or your faith exists solely to save you from punishment? I'm asked this question all the time. What do I have to do in order to get what I want from God? What do I have to do to have a little white picket fence? What do I have to do to get a cat, a spouse? What do I have to do to be given the stuff that I want, that I need, that I deserve? Do you hear the problem with this so far? When we live life trying to say that everything we do should benefit ourselves, what do we have? We've buried our life in the ground. We've kept it secret. Because we're only going to do whatever it is that keeps us safe. When we start recognizing the I wants, I deserves, I get, all of these I statements, we have a warning sign. Faith, by the way, is not about making others like us. Faith is about making us more like God. And what did God do? God loved. God cared. The natural-minded person wants to know what they have to do to get salvation. The person who actually is loving doesn't need to ask the question. One who lives in relationships of love with other people receive more than double the amount they put into it. When we're in relationships, however, where all we want is to take from other people, we never feel satisfied. We are always hungry. We are always scared. We never are given what we need. In this case, this one person who buried his 6,000 days of labor into the ground was only caring about himself. The other two were in relationship. What can you do this weekend to be, or this week, to be in relationship? How can you listen to somebody else and love and care for them without any question coming back at you? If it's another person stating how much they love their faith and doesn't agree with you, can you be okay with that? Can you be okay caring about someone who doesn't agree with you? Can you be okay helping someone and not getting a kickback? Can you be okay in trading in what God has truly entrusted you with, which is caring and loving without fear? If we do this, if we are able to get rid of fear and care for people without concern for ourselves, you will double your profits. And at the end, the Lord will look at you and say, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Amen.